Let's talk some UVA football. Chris Graham here, Augusta Free Press. This week, Virginia plays William and Mary. Not a lot to preview there, to say the least. No offense to William and Mary, but no, that game. I mean, last look, the Vegas hadn't even put a line on the game. Why we play these games, no idea. I mean, I know why, but it doesn't make logical sense why. It just I know the reasons given why. So we'll talk a lot here about the NC State game. The disappointing result, 35-31 loss. UVA won the stat sheet in lots of ways. 514 total yards, 416 for NC State. 13 third down conversions, 13 of 19. NC State had one third down conversion. Virginia ran for 257 yards, didn't allow a sack, still somehow lost that game. It felt familiar. There were several games in 2023, the JMU, NC State, and Louisville games. The Louisville lost last year, where Virginia outplayed the other side and lost. Um, it's year four in the Elliott era, and he's still talking after a loss about his team growing up a little bit in a loss. That's disconcerting, kind of getting tired of it, right? If you're watching this, it's a little old. Here was a quote after the game from Coach Elliott. Super proud of the guys. Thought they battled their tails off. Thought we grew up a little bit as a football team. Still no moral victories. Okay, so he just spent, he spent the first three sentences there declaring moral victory and then says no moral victories. Um, Unfortunately, the $30 million that he was given to build a roster didn't include any extra money to make some staff changes. The TV folks, if you watched the game on TV like I did, obviously, I didn't drive down to Raleigh for this game. They made a big deal about the continuity on Elliott's staff, but continuity when you're 11 and 23 in 3 years might not be something to brag about. Looking at the issues, number one issue was red zone. Once again, Virginia ranked 130th out of 134 FBS teams last year in red zone TD percentage, 43.2% TDs in the red zone last year. That was down from 115th in 2023 and 114th in 2022. I mean, so yeah, they were 114. This Virginia offense was 114th out of 130 roughly teams. There's always a new team or two every year in 2022, and somehow we've gotten worse each year. The Virginia offense made five trips to the red zone on Saturday. The tally was two TDs, a field goal, a failed fourth down at the state eight, and an INT into the red zone, into the end zone, excuse me, on a first and 10 from the 12 in the final 2 minutes. You obviously remember that play. That was at the end of the game. I didn't see Elliott directly address the red zone issue post game. Um, Reporters didn't ask. Reporters after these games don't ask hard questions. Why I've given up being part of that media corps after games. Um, he just said very generally the offense needs to be better in the red zone, but he referenced the odd sequence that had nothing to do with the red zone, where he decided to kick on 4th and 5 at the 30, a 47-yard field goal attempt that hit the upright. Has nothing to do with the red zone. But Will Betcher, is the kicker, made his only red zone attempt. And as it turns out, if instead of going for 4th and 1 at the 8, on the failed fourth down conversion, if you kick the field goal there and it's 35-34, you drive in a red zone and 2 minutes to go, you don't need a touchdown. You can run clock and kick a field goal there, win the game. Didn't do so. There was conservative play calling at issue there. Des Kitchings, I mean, if you're gaining 514 yards of offense, you've called a good game. But there were a couple of plays on the drive that led to the first field goal in the red zone. In fact, the only field goal in the red zone. After the two touchdowns in the first quarter that were red zone touchdowns, actually no, there was a red zone touchdown later in the game. In any case, the red zone field goal came after there was a 2nd and 3 at the state 9. Two running plays led to a field goal. And then the fourth quarter field goal try came again after it was 4th and 5 at the 30. You got to know. You got to know your kicker's range. I mean, Will Betteridge, it was said during camp, was making kicks in the low 50-yard plus range, but he attempted a 47 to 48 yarder in the Coastal game that was short, landed in the end zone, and then now this one hits the upright. I mean, you got to know your guy's range. I mean, it's He maybe made what Bettridge maybe made, 51, 52 yarders in the summer camp, fall camp, training camp, but they're out there on the field before the game. I don't know what the wind situation was. It was hot in Raleigh on Saturday, but your kicker will tell you, and hopefully he's honest. In this direction, I can make it from 50. But if you're not making them, you can't send the guy back out there for that kind of thing. So anyway, um, with the last drive, not only, it's a minute and change to go. I think it was 107 to go on the clock when Virginia had a first down at the 12 after, I mean, Chandler Morris driving his team from the state, excuse me, from the UVA 19. So great drive to get him down there. At that stage, you probably don't need to throw the ball on first down. You probably should run the ball on first down. Virginia had a timeout. Uh, could have bled some clock like they did at the end of the first half expertly, to not only put the offense in position to score a touchdown. I think it was 22 seconds left on the clock when they scored that touchdown, but then make it hard, if not impossible, for NC State to then answer. Instead, they went with what they went with, throwing the ball on first down, and it was intercepted, and the game was over. So there was issues, red zone issues, continuing from dating the early years, the early days of the Elliott era in Virginia and Charlottesville. Number two issue, no pressure on the QB. The official stat sheet tells us no sacks, four QB pressures, one batted down at the line. CJ Bailey was 16 of 23, 200 yards. 10 of his 16 completions went for 10 plus. Um, Clean pocket, 13 of 14 on 14 dropbacks for 172 yards. He had 44 yards and two TDs on the ground, a 30-yard keeper right up the gut, and then a 12-yard scramble where the defensive line did not set the edge, did not stay in their lanes, and secondary and man coverage. Once Bailey got around the corner, he literally walked into the end zone. Um, you know, Lack of pressure. I mean, that's two straight weeks now. This defense should be doing a better job. They've got guys who can put pressure on. They're just not doing it. Um, and part of the reason we were told after the game by Tony Elliott was because State was having success on first and second down. John Ruzinski, the defensive coordinator, was not able to sub the way he wanted to. I'll buy that, except that okay, one drive that happens. Next drive, come out and do something different. Virginia defensively kind of stuck with the game plan, and it didn't work. So whatever. That's what it is. What's happened to the interior D line? I don't know. NC State ran the ball 9 times for 15 yards between the tackles in their win over ECU in week one. Between the tackles on Saturday, 107 yards on 8 attempts. I mean, if you can run up the middle and I mean, there was one big run, a 57-yarder by Hollywood Smothers, the tailback. But if you're averaging 16 yards up the middle, you just run up the middle. Smothers finished with 140 yards on 17 attempts, and State had 216 yards total on the ground. I've gone over the INT in the end zone. Second half, there's an issue with second and third quarter scoring with this Virginia team that was brought up in Elliott's press conference. The middle of the game seems to be an issue for Virginia, and has been since his team took over. Um, Grading things out, we'll kind of go over this. Kind of gone over a lot of the points here. The quarterback I gave a B to Chandler Morris. He had good counting numbers: 30 of 43, 257 yards, one TD, one INT. Ran the ball 3 times, all design runs, gaining 56 yards. From a depth perspective, only two attempts were 20 yards plus in the air. They were both incompletions. Medium distance actually did pretty well. 9 of 13, 134 yards. He did throw the INT. That was on a medium depth pass, medium being 10 to 19 yards in the air. Um, the uh, the pressure situation with a clean pocket, 23 of 32, 207 yards under pressure, 7 of 11, 50 yards through the INT, but also the touchdown pass under pressure. State blitzed on 14 of his pass dropbacks. Morris was 8 of 14 on those. Um, he was asked to do what he did largely, except the INT is what dropped him from what could have been a B plus or A minus down to a B. It was just a bad read and poorly executed physically, unfortunately, in that one play. I mean, that cost Virginia the game. The O line gets an A plus from me. 257 yards rushing, no sacks. Pressures on 11 of the 43 QB dropbacks. None of those pressures registered as hits. You can't do any better than that. The tailbacks get an A in my book. Jamari Taylor, 150 yards and three TDs on 17 carries. The backups were productive. Xavier Brown, 27 yards on eight carries. Noah Vaughn, 24 yards on four carries. They each had two, Taylor and Brown at least, each had two catches on three targets. Brown got dinged with a drop pass. The INT was on an attempt. Jamari Taylor was the intended receiver on the INT, but not his fault. As far as blocking goes, Taylor was on the field for four pass block snaps, and he had one run block. Vaughn was in for two run blocks. Both had clean sheets blocking wise. So, I should go A plus here. I'm just dinging maybe for the drop pass. I mean, that's pretty much it. It wasn't perfect, but it was damn near close. The receivers I'm giving a B to. In part, it was just the game plan. It was the game plan was for Morris to get the ball out quickly. His average drop back, according to Pro Football Focus, and I love that they can they do this and give you this information, 2.53 seconds. So it was pretty much three-step drops. The two deep targets were the slot receiver Cam Ross and tight end Sage Ennis. They were both again incompletions. I want to highlight Jamal Edrine, 6'3" wideout, had four catches on four targets, and all in the 10 to 19 yard range, 60 yards on those catches. Yards after catch were the ding that I give here. After averaging 6.0 yards after catch in week one, the unit averaged just 3.6 yards after catch in week two. If you're going to go short, you gotta, I mean, and some of this could be on the quarterback as well, but you got to get, if you're going to go short with your passing game, you got to get more yards after catch. You can't throw, 5 to 7 yard passes and only gain 5 to 7 yards. You'll do a little bit better job than that from that standpoint. Defensive and special teams report card. Um, this was odd. I noted I made a comparison in the column that I wrote comparing the UVA defense in the NC State game to Brett Saberhagen, the two-time Cy Young winner from the 80s, largely in 90s. Saberhagen would have 20 wins one year and go 7 and 12 the next, and he did this. He alternated this for like 7 or 8 years. He'd go 18 and 10, 14 and 16, 23 and 6, 5 and 9. The UVA defense in the first quarter gave up 122 yards of offense. Second quarter, 40 yards. Third quarter, 230 yards. Fourth quarter, 24 yards. It was all or nothing. And quarters one and three where NC State scored. Okay, technically they scored a couple plays into the second quarter on their second drive, but largely the damage was done in the first and third quarters by this NC State offense. They were the unstoppable force in the first and third. The UVA defense, the immovable object in quarters two and four. So the defensive front, I gave a C minus, no sacks. The pressure was decent. Pro Football Focus reported pressure on 11 of the 26 dropbacks for CJ Bailey. He was 3 of 9 for 28 yards on those dropbacks. The run defense gave up 215 yards on 36 attempts. I mentioned a lot of that damage was up the gut. And also to the left side of the up the gut, left side in general, left of center all the way to the end, 170 yards on 22 runs. Middle linebacker James Jackson led the D with 5 run tackles. Edge rushers Daniel Rickert and Fisher Kamak and interior lineman Jason Hammond led the unit in QB pressures with 2 each. Then the secondary I gave a C. I've mentioned that Bailey was 16 of 23 for 200 yards and a TD. The secondary was logged for 10 of the 13 completions, 10 of the completions on 13 attempts for 134 of the yards. Emmanuel Carnley, cornerback, was the cover defender on the TD pass. The unit had one pass defensed by cornerback Jordan Robinson. In the short passing game behind the line of scrimmage and inside of 10 yards downfield, Bailey was 11 of 12 for 88 yards. Intermediate, he was 4 of 6 for 85 yards. He completed one deep ball, the TD pass. Special teams, I gave a B. Cam Ross, for the second straight week, was a specialist of the week in the ACC. He had 81 yards on punt returns, including a 48-yarder that helped set up the touchdown in the second quarter that I mentioned was the expert drive, eating clock at the end of the second quarter. Daniel Sparks averaged 44 yards on his 2 punts, one of those down inside the 20. All 6 of his kickoffs were touchdowns. You can't do much better than that. The weak link was Will Bettridge, 29-yard field goal in the red zone, but doink from 47 in the fourth. So um, this week again, the matchup is William and Mary, 12 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. Not expecting a lot out of this. Virginia's paying $450,000 to William and Mary for the win, so better go out there and get it right. You kind of just hope that you come out of the game with nobody hurt, that you get your offense and defense first and second teams, your two deep, some good reps, but also get them out of the game early. If you can, get control of it, by halftime, midway through the third quarter at the latest, you can rest your starters on what looks is going to be a warm day. The forecast temperature in the low 80s for Saturday afternoon in Charlottesville. Get your third and fourth string guys some reps just in case you need them developed for later in the season as injuries pop up. And then rest yourself up for Stanford on September 20th. So those are the goals going into Saturday. Win the game, win it convincingly enough to give your ones and twos a breather. Okay, so it's Wednesday as I'm recording this and finishing up this recording. We still got some stuff coming about UVA football this week. I've already written about the scheduling that leads to games like UVA Women Mary being on the schedule in the first place. It wasn't a pretty column. We'll talk about Jamari Taylor and the special role he's playing. 5 touchdowns through 2 weeks, all on the ground for Taylor, the North Carolina Central transfer. We'll talk about the defensive line and some of the issues that group is having. We talked about that a little bit here, but a little bit more in depth on that later this week with comments from Tony Elliott and another description of Tony Elliott trying to defend some of the play calling in the red zone. We'll have that a little bit later this week too. So if you have any questions for me, any comments, anything you want me to look into, UVA athletics wise or anything else wise, drop me a line at chris@augustafreepress.com.